As the mother of 2 teenage boys, I've come to learn that you never know what you might find in your child's backpack. Over the years, I have found dirty socks, half-eaten sandwiches, torn up tests, and crumpled essays. Of course, whenever I find a test or a paper marked with a low grade, the inevitable talk happens. And it usually goes something like this. Gabriel, what is this? Why am I just now seeing it? Well, sorry, Mom, kind of forgot to tell you about that. Of course, I already know the answer to my question. Gabe is embarrassed by his failure and afraid of how I might react to it. And aren't we all embarrassed by our failures and afraid of how others might react to them, of what they might think of us? To err is human, and so also is it human to avoid admitting error, because when we do so, we become vulnerable to our own potentially negative self-perceptions and to others' potentially negative perceptions of us. Mistakes, errors, failures are for most of us frightening, intimidating, and even shameful. We are afraid of failing, of forgetting, of being wrong, and of just plain looking stupid in front of others. Though an inherent part of the human condition, this fear of failure prevents us from reaching our full potential academically, professionally, and personally. Therefore, I invite you to reframe your perception of mistakes and of failures as a necessary and a critical part of the learning process. By embracing rather than fearing failure, you will grow in your scholarship, in your professionalism, and most importantly, in your personhood. Let's begin with some working definitions of a mistake and of failure. A mistake can be defined as any error or mishap in thought or action. A failure is any outcome that does not produce the desired or intended results. Mistakes often lead to a sense of failure, but certainly our mistakes can range from forehead-smacking moments to life-transforming events. Who here hasn't had one of those forehead-smacking moments where we think to ourselves, oh man, I dropped the ball, I goofed, I messed up. And yet, on the other hand, some of our mistakes carry life or death consequences, like the one in which my Grandpa Joe, in his early 20s at the time, accidentally took the life of another young man while driving under the influence of alcohol in the late 1920s. Throughout his 75-year life, Grandpa Joe carried the heavy weight of guilt and grief that came from taking that man's life. Indeed, some of our mistakes are so serious that we never fully rebound. Fortunately, though, most of the mistakes we make are not life or death matters, but rather rich opportunities for us to learn and to grow. in our personhood. Travel back in time with me to your childhood, or perhaps even to your adolescence. And I would like for you to think about a mistake that you made, whether at school or at home, one from which you gained a critical insight into yourself or an important lesson about who you are. I find myself at recess on a blustery January morning in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I grew up. I am 7 years old and in 2nd grade. My best friend Beth and I are alternating between making snow angels and throwing snowballs at a nearby group of boys. While frolicking in the snow, we spot Mark, a 4th grader in a wheelchair who sits alone. Burning with curiosity, Beth leans over to me and whispers, "Do you think he can walk?" "I don't know," I shrug. "Ask him," she pleads. "Nah, I don't think so," I reply. "Ask him," she urges again. Though still having misgivings, I burn with curiosity, and so I walk over to Mark and I ask him, "Can you walk?" Tears immediately well up in Mark's eyes as he turns and rolls away in his wheelchair on the salt-laden sidewalk, and my heart sinks as I realize that I have done something terribly wrong. I have made a mistake. I hurt Mark's feelings. At the prompting of my 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Cochran, who had witnessed the incident, I write a letter of apology and apologize in person to Mark the next day. And fortunately for me, he graciously accepts my apology, and we even become friends in the months to come, occasionally playing catch together at recess. But lo, these many years later, I still regret my hurtful words to Mark that day. And yet, I realize that I learned an important lesson from that mistake, one from which I grew into a more compassionate and less judgmental person. To err is unequivocally human. The question is, how do we learn and grow from the mistakes that we will inevitably make? I do not have any easy or ready answers for you today, but I would like to submit to you 4 strategies for helping you learn and grow from those mistakes. To begin, when you make a mistake, and you will, and I will too, practice self-compassion. Self-compassion means that you're giving yourself permission to be human, to goof, to drop the ball, to mess up, and then to learn and grow and go from there. It means that you're not beating up on yourself and that you're not wallowing in self-doubt or worse still, self-pity. Self-compassion is where it starts. Secondly, I'm asking you to view learning as a process, not a one-time event, because learning is a process. As much as we would like the shortest distance between those 2 proverbial points to be a straight line, the path to understanding is often cluttered, meandering, and protracted. Why? Because learning is not a lockstep linear process, but an ongoing and a recursive one. And learning takes time. It takes time to learn how to solve that algebra problem. And it takes time to learn how to distinguish between the philosophy of Plato and that of Aristotle. And it takes time to learn how to solve that new spreadsheet application on your work computer. And time as well to learn how to resolve those differences of opinion that will arise with your significant other. And learning is hard work, especially when you're encountering new and challenging ideas for the first time. That is why the third strategy is so critical to learning from mistakes, from recovering from feelings of failure. The third strategy that I submit to you today is engaging in deliberate practice. Deliberate practice. In his book, Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell notes that the attainment of excellence typically requires 10 years or 10,000 hours of practice, but not just any kind of practice. Deliberate practice, the kind of practice in which you isolate what is not working and you focus on mastering the task at hand before moving on. And making mistakes is critical to this process because our mistakes and our failures teach us where to target that deliberate practice. Take the example of legendary basketball player Michael Jordan. As many of you know, Jordan was actually cut from his high school basketball team. Jordan failed. But he did not allow his failure to stop him from moving forward. Why? Because he failed forward. In Jordan's own words, "I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. On 26 occasions, I have been entrusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Whether it's basketball, Jordan style, or simply something for us at school, at work, in our personal lives, deliberate practice is key. The fourth and final strategy that I suggest to you today is adopting an I can fix it mindset when you experience those mistakes and failures. When you think, I can fix this, you develop a critical habit of mind that allows you to view ability as dynamic, not static. And when you see your own capacities as dynamic, that is when you accept challenges, when you persist through setbacks, and when you view your own effort as a path toward mastery. When you fail, and you will, and I will, I urge you to fail forward, to fail toward a fix. So you bombed a chemistry test this week. Engage in self-reflective questions. Did I or did I not listen in class? Did I or did I not do the homework? Did I or did I not study for that test? Or did I genuinely just not get it? Allow the answers to those self-reflective questions guide you to take the necessary steps for moving forward, for moving toward success. As educator Mike Rose attests, error marks a place where education begins. I urge you to reframe your perception of mistakes and failures as a necessary and important part of the learning process. And I challenge you to take those calculated risks, to make those mistakes, and to become lifelong learners. Because when you embrace, rather than fear failure, you become self-compassionate. You view learning as a process, not a one-time event. You engage in deliberate practice, and you adopt and you implement an I can fix it mindset as you fail forward. And I earnestly believe that if you apply these strategies, you will indeed grow, learn in your scholarship, your professionalism, and most importantly, your personhood. In closing, I quote from a poem titled, "Don't Give Up." Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt, and you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems afar. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worst that you must not quit.